All right. Well, it looks like it is just about 8 o'clock Mountain Time, super early. So we will get started. And let's start with the video. So check in this way. But yeah, hello everyone. Welcome. This is DES 344 Advanced Print Production. And we are in our 4th week, our first session, otherwise known as our final week together. And not quite our final session, but about this close to the final session as well. So yeah, kind of a cool thing, fun thing. If you have made it this far, which hopefully all of you have, pat yourselves on the back. Week 4 is always an accomplishment. I feel that even as an instructor, I always pat myself on the back like, okay, we've made it. I don't think we've lost too many students along the way, hopefully none. But yeah, always a good feeling to kind of see the end. The end is near. So a couple housekeeping things that we'll just do with the camera on. If you're a student who feels like you haven't made it, and you're watching this session and you're like, you know what, I think I'm just going to throw in the towel. Like, it's too late. There's only a couple days. We're just going to like retake this class at a later date, whatever. Don't do that quite yet. So just a couple of reminders. You do need a 60% to pass the course, so 60% final grade. But here's the thing, is there are lots of little assignments that are worth, little amounts of points, but all the littles tend to add up to something big. So if you're kind of like, you were great week 1, you were okay week 2, week 3, you kind of fell off a cliff, and so you're considering not doing anything, don't do that. Don't let that be you. But instead go back through the course and just kind of see what you might be able to do to kind of just bring your grade up to that passing mark. So for example, past discussions, great way to get some points. Career assessment quiz, 15 points. All these things that are really, that can just kind of nudge you along, and sooner than later you might be passing and not even realize it. The other thing that's a good one worth some points, not as tricky, is the assessment from week 3. So is the print production analysis. It's basically just some math calculations, and you can even use chat bots in printing websites to kind of do the work for you if you want to. I did that in the session, in the demo, 100% legal. That's why they're there. So check out, if you haven't done assessment 3, check out session 2 of week 3. And that's kind of where I go over it pretty much step by step. So, things to think about. I want to see everybody pass. So if you want to see yourself pass, let's figure out how we can do this, because you guys are legit. Like, this is 344. Most of you next year at this time should have your bachelor's degrees in graphic design. And so, think the long-term game here. Like, you can do it. You can get through this. And then, you can be done with school and be a college graduate. And like, who doesn't want that? So stick with it. You guys are almost there. And for most of you, you're like, I'm there. What's she talking about? Should I be concerned? No. Just keep moving forward, and things should be good. All right. Well, I'm going to turn off the video camera and jump back into the slides. But as always, good to see everybody. And turn in work. That will be our mantra. for this week especially. All points are good points. All late work is good work. So, get it in. Get it in if and when you can. All right, so we are going to stop this and jump back into here and take a look at our agenda, what we're going to do for this session. So we'll see, as usual, we have the agenda, and then we also have the realization that we're a little bit flexible in this whole process. But yeah, so we're going to start out with kind of feedback 301. Basically what that's going to be is an analysis, not really an analysis, kind of an introduction to doing feedback, critique 301, to doing critique, to kind of what that looks like, how that goes, that sort of thing. And this is in direct connection to your discussion for this week, which I think is a really cool discussion. So I hope that you all are excited about it, as I am excited to see what you will do, how you will kind of get into it. But yeah, so Critique 301, we are probably going to begin with some feedback, as usual, with just kind of what came in for assignment 3, just to kind of show you guys what's up with that. As well as just to give you guys some help if you turned yours in, some additional feedback to kind of see what you could do to further develop, kind of further refine as you're getting ready to make your final pieces. Then we're going to jump into postcard design. So your assignment for this week is to make a postcard to continue on with your campaign. Here's a little pro tip. Postcards are essentially mini posters. Most of you have a poster already, so life perhaps maybe has gotten slightly easier with that small bit of knowledge. But yeah, so postcard design. And then we're going to do at some point this week, probably in our session tomorrow, analyzing for consistency. And basically what that is all about is just looking at how you can look at all of your pieces kind of back to back together and make sure that you are having a consistent, a cohesive kind of design feeling. Overall, you're not, going out in left field for one of them. It feels like it's a consistent thing. So that's what we're going to do for that dot point, so to speak. All right, so we have a couple, actually let's go into the course itself for this. And pardon my messy desktop. And also one thing, when we open up our Adobe applications, we're going to look at the new updates of CC, which I noticed yesterday, and I was like, whoa, when did you happen? Okay, so week 4, multi-part print campaigns. We've got 3 learning objectives. So discuss industry typical goals, strategies, and methods for spot color, die cutting, and special coding applications. Number 2, create a press-ready deliverable with an embossing layer. And number 3, apply the 4 main principles of design to produce print-ready promotional material. So if you are reading this and thinking, these learning objectives feel a little deja vu, you would be correct in that feeling. So the kind of cool thing about this course is that we introduced a whole bunch of new content at the beginning, so kind of weeks 1, weeks 2. And then from there, we've kind of just been kind of reiterating, reinforcing it, repeating it as we go through. And the reason that we've been doing that is not because we got lazy or whatever, but because we thought it would be really good if, you guys could get exposed to the information kind of at the beginning of the course. And then the rest of the course could be kind of a repetition of that, just to help it kind of further bake into your psyches, into your system, and just give you practice. So I feel like, from my own experience as a student, I feel like in some ways it's really exciting when every week you learn something new. In other ways, every week when I tend to learn something new. It just means I forget whatever I learned that was new the last week, because my brain only has kind of a limited capacity for new. So if you happen to be like me, hopefully you've appreciated a little bit of the repetition that this course has. It's kind of like once you get it, then you're kind of good for the rest of the weeks. If you're not like me and you think you thought it's a bit boring, well, hopefully at least it's been a good kind of maybe a relax, slightly slower pace than the ones that are coming at you quick. Okay, so David Carson, cool video to watch. Definitely click here as you're going through this. And one thing that I want to just draw your attention to quickly, and I'm going to just from the outset, I'm going to be a total broken record about this, but career integration quiz, 15 points. All you have to do is reflect on your experience, and those 15 points will be yours. So please, please, please make time to do this career integration quiz. Every mod, I have full hope that I will be in a 100% career integration quiz course. And every mod, somebody lets me down. So don't be the student that lets me down. But please, in all honesty, make time for this, because not only is it good for you because you get 15 points, which could be the difference between nudging you up to something better from where you currently are. But the thing that I really appreciate is that you guys get to tell me what you liked and what you didn't like about the course. And so I feel like this is kind of one of the few places where you actually can be very honest and very open. And because you guys can be honest and open, I feel like I learn a bunch about how I present things, about what your experience is like. Oftentimes, just by nature of online learning, education in general, it's very much like, here, we created this for you as the student, and now you must go through this experience, and you don't have a whole lot of say in what's going on. But in this little section, you have a ton of say, because you can say what you liked, what you didn't like, what you connected with, what you didn't connect with, and just kind of provide that critical feedback, which we do read, we do pay attention to, and we do, think about, and follow up if it's a needed thing. So for example, just to kind of show you, if you're like, oh, you just want us to tell us, you just want us to say that you're great and we like the class and whatever. I would love that, but there was a student a couple mods ago who said, like, I hate that you do feedback in sessions. Like 70% of the first session is looking at other students' work, and I think that is boring. And I think that that's a poor use of your time, and I didn't come here to see other people's work. And it was an interesting piece of feedback, because it made me say, I think this is something that's of value, but apparently I'm not doing a great job communicating why it is that we do this. And, maybe the student would still be, anti-critique, whatever. But at least for me, it said I need to make sure I'm very clear about explaining, and not just saying, I know what I'm doing, therefore they're going to know what I'm doing too, because we're all designers. Like, no, nobody can get inside anybody else's head. So, it's good if you guys let that stuff out. And if it's super critical, that's fine. Like, I want you to be honest. I want you to be you. And if it's super positive, I want you to be honest, and I want you to be you as well. But yes, it's a growing process. So as designers, we always grow in an iterative way through feedback. And iterative meaning it's like a cycle. So we kind of learn something, we produce something, we assess it, we go back and we see how we could do it better. Same deal with teaching, same deal with these courses. It's never perfect. It's always kind of in flux, as I think it should be. So all that to say, do the career assessment, and things will be good. So, okay. All right, let me just see if there's anything else I need to point out quickly here. I don't think so. Let's just click on the assessment. Cumulative course assessment. This is again one other thing that would be great for everybody to give a try, because it is and we're going to go over this in tomorrow's session much more deeply, much more in depth. But basically, it's just a 15 question quiz, and so this is all stuff that you have encountered at some point throughout this course. So again, definitely worth a try and see. Excuse me. See how you do. See how things kind of shake out. So another good thing to think about. Okay, so we will jump back into these slides and not do that. Yeah, no, we're not going to do this quite yet. We are going to engage in some critique and some feedback instead. All right, so for those of you who remember, and we're going to, oops, oh no, it disappeared. As soon as I moved the little guy, it was gone. But yeah, so anyway, so for those of you who remember, assignment 3 and assessment 3, we're making a folder for your chosen, well, for Cloud Sunbeam, everybody's chosen band. But yeah, so a folder that was going to hold some promotional materials, as well as a USB drive, and then a CD cover that was also going to be used as part of this whole kind of promotional scheme. So kind of key parts of the folder, key parts of the CD cover as well, are again consistency with whatever the design of the poster was. So the idea is that you established the look and feel of your poster, or look and feel of the idea for the band, by creating your poster. And then these different pieces are really used as a way to kind of extend what that looks like. So a couple kind of very broad things that I saw from kind of multiple people is that everybody was very good at kind of copying directly. And I think it's good to copy elements, in a fairly direct way, since that does aid in consistency. But as you can see here, and as we're going to see in some others, think about too how you can kind of innovate on what you have. So it's not like a direct copy paste. So it's more like a suggestion of similar elements and kind of how they're arranged. And so it feels more like it has just a bit more variety. So it's not the same thing, but it's kind of the same elements, just interpreted in different ways. And the reason that you want to do this is just because if it's the same old everywhere, it tends to get a little bit boring. So you want to figure out how you can really play with the potential in what you're doing and in kind of what you're producing. So that's kind of the big overall. And that was kind of a generalized thing that I saw through a lot of pieces. Okay, so here's our first one. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to, but it's now apparently gone, is Adobe. So this is the new updated Illustrator. We have the new updated Photoshop and the new updated InDesign. So if you haven't recently clicked on your little Adobe CC thing at the top of your screen, you should see that. So if you click on this and go to apps, there are, well, they don't say it anymore because I updated, but Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign did have some pretty significant updates to them. So you just might want to go through and run those and update those. And these are all the things I don't have installed. But yeah, so just give it a whirl. And I haven't really played around with the new updates to see what exactly has been updated, but I know that in Illustrator there was something all about the properties panel is different, and so you can see here. So you can show these things. That's easy. hide, show guides, lock guides. Huh, cool stuff. So anyway, just update, and see what's new and different type thing. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get our layers panel open and just talk about kind of what this is looking like. So for the CD, you had to have an emboss, and you can see this is emboss is indicated in the layers panel, as well as with 100% K, which is 100% black. And then the artwork goes in the artwork layer, of course. So I would say here, it's a cool kind of look overall. I think it's working. We're going to just turn off the emboss layer. But like I said just a bit ago, I would, excuse me, I would really challenge you all to think, this is replicated exactly. How could you instead just kind of make this a little bit more, just a little bit different? So I said, could you reflect, well, I said to this student, could you reflect this so that it's just not a direct copy, it's kind of doing something a little bit different. And I think what would be even better is, could you just move these shapes? So let's arrange, bring to front. Could you just move these shapes so it's slightly different compilation of them? So with this poster, or I'm sorry, with this CD cover, kind of with this general design, to me, because there's a drop shadow on most of the shapes, and I would actually put a drop shadow on all of them. Oops, I guess that didn't work. Actually, well, yeah, here, let's just copy this guy. I could go through and put a drop shadow, but that would take a while. So, but yeah, so I would say for this, with this design, because the shapes have a drop shadow, it feels like they're kind of jumping out of the background in an interesting way. And so to me, when I look at this design, what I see is kind of shapes in constant motion, a little bit like a snow globe or like a boggle game or something, where you shake something up and then things are kind of in flux, and then eventually they're going to come and settle. So this to me feels very much like it's a design in flux, because you have shadow, because you have movement, because you have things at like kind of these different skewed angles. So what I would say is just, take that, you can even, go off the edge with this, so it would essentially cut, so it would be cut right here. But yeah, so I would say just play that up even more, just this idea of kind of chaotic motion, as opposed to kind of replication. And so for these, just figure out how you want to move stuff around, what it wants to look like, kind of what it's gonna go through, that sort of thing, so that it just feels that much more dynamic. And then I would also take anywhere that has a black stroke, I would take the black stroke off, mostly because you have the shadow. So I think the shadow itself brings enough kind of separation from the background that I think you don't need the other elements. So I think I would say, I think I have said, how can you just kind of make this a little bit more dynamic and in flux, as opposed to kind of everything just being a replication. So you're keeping the same shapes. So in that sense, you have kind of that repetition there, but you're not keeping, they're not in the same arrangement type thing. So they're always kind of active, they're moving, they're energetic. And then I would say for the type, I actually still really like the idea, and I'm guessing guessing you didn't, because you didn't do it, but that's fine. It's your design, it's your call. I still really like the idea of the text being angled as well, so it kind of is capturing that dynamic movement of the shapes, and maybe it's even like skewed a bit, because I think that could really make it come, and then make it stand out in some way, make it come alive in an interesting manner. But again, that's That's completely up to you. And I think you could get rid of the, if you just changed up the color of the font, I think you could get rid of um, the white box and just have the type itself be enough. So I would say I think that's a potential. So it's just something to try. But yeah, main thing is, really shake up that background and see how you can turn it into something that's just a little bit more visually dynamic, and is always kind of constantly shifting, constantly in flux. So we're going to jump into the other document, which is going to be this guy. So again, same deal here. So this is the folder, kind of the companion piece folder, and and this is the new InDesign as well. But yeah, so this is a companion folder, and again, just think about how you can, how you can make it so it's not just a direct. Oops. So it's not just a direct copy of one side to the next. What's the look? What's the feel? How are these gonna shift? How is this gonna change? What's gonna happen in these elements? Is one gonna be bigger? Can I make it bigger? Maybe. Is something going to be bigger? Is something not? What's going to happen with these shapes? Could they angle slightly different? What's like the energetic kind of movement piece to it? So I really like the idea of the cutout shapes. I like how they're kind of flowing through the piece. So I think it's a cool idea. Just shake it up just a little bit more. How can you make that happen? How can you get that in there as well? So just something to consider. Kind of cool. Maybe get this guy. And the other thing too is make sure that I don't know if this might just be my when I open this, like things, because it's a different version of InDesign, so things are going to get a little bit hectic. But make sure that you are, kind of being consistent in how you're treating your shapes. So if the purple has the drop shadow and the gradient, make sure it always has the drop shadow. Make sure it always has the gradient. That type of thing. So kind of keep that up there. So yeah. So anyway, kind of fun though, and it's cool because when you have shapes like this, like there's never anything that you can do that's wrong. Because they're just shapes and they're kind of random and loose. So all right, let's jump back into, so hopefully that's helpful. And I actually really like I like this look. I think it's really cool. So I would say push it. It's worth pushing because it's got some really good potential. All right, so here's another example. This is a slightly different version of the CD cover. Totally fine. You guys could choose whatever you wanted. So emboss. Wait for it. No, it's actually, you're not going to see it because the idea is that the letters are embossed, which I think is smart. Just like in our previous one, the name of the band was the thing that was kind of sticking out. But yeah, so once again, looks super cool. And this is let's see, this is really cool because what this is actually, these are, and I think I showed you guys this before, these are orange, but because they're underneath purple, they turn into this like wild, interesting color. So that's kind of really fun to see, just the play of colors and kind of how things come together. I think the only thing you don't really need for this is Mountain Park Presents. So this is the band itself. This is their thing. So maybe this could be like the Cloud Sunbeam live at Mountain Park or something. But yeah, I don't think you just need the present there. I think just the name is fine. And the other thing too is I feel like this is some feedback that I gave in the rubric as well, is if you took one of these shapes and just carried it over a little bit to the background. I think that might be kind of cool. And I don't know how this CD cover folds, but I just want to see, these shapes, well, not repeated like that because that doesn't look like a good thing, but just repeated a little bit somewhere, kind of carried over from whatever the front cover is. I guess this is the back and this would be the inside, but just in there in some way, so that it feels just a little bit more kind of cohesive and connected. And if you're like, wait, Lisa, copying directly, what? Don't copy directly. Just give a little hint, of something that could be there, just to tie in that consistency, to tie in that kind of cohesiveness all together, as far as what you're showing. So I think that would be just a nice little touch. And again, nothing like obviously copy paste, but just something that would have that feel to it, have that kind of carry over, kind of tie together. All right, so let's look at the matching poster, or I'm sorry, if I have it, which I might not. All right, well, that didn't work. We're going to look at the matching folder. We won't look at it quite yet because it looks like I opened up one twice instead of two, but that's okay. All right, so let's move on to the next piece. This one is Wildness, which is pretty amazing. All right, so here's the emboss. So it's going to be Cloud Sunbeam raised up. And again, this is just some wild, curving, crazy lines, which I think is working really, really well. Let's just turn off registration, and you can even turn off template. Well, I guess we keep that on. But yeah, so you can see here, front cover, back cover. So it's going to look like this kind of angular, linear, I don't even know what it is. It's kind of like a slinky meets meets some light rays, light beams coming through. But yeah, looks really cool overall, and really definitely dynamic in how it's coming together. So, and this is a good example. Similar elements showing up everywhere, but definitely in slightly different configurations, definitely in slightly different arrangements. So it really does feel like it has that kind of dynamic consistency from one part to the next. So here's the InDesign version of that. And you can see again, working well, kind of taking the same big sweeping arc, and then just putting it into the folder. The cool thing here, I thought, was also having Cloud Sunbeam appear on the little flap of the folder. So this is kind of the pocket, and then the USB drive is going to go down here. So it's kind of cool to see like how that's repeating. So again, an interesting thing to think about. You have this as your real estate. So what are you going to do with it? How are you going to utilize it to just add, another dimension, another place to put a little bit of a stamp as to what your brand is that you're showing. So it might be, something worthwhile to think about. So yeah, so here, and then the other one. It almost looks like Loud Sunbeam to me, but it works. I get it. Okay, so here's next one. So we have Cloud Sunbeam coming up in circles. And actually in this one, not seeing the emboss layer. So just make sure that you are indicating something in the CD itself that is going to be embossed. So again, emboss raised up from the rest of the paper, kind of pushed out, so to speak. So what is that? What is that going to be? And then on this one too, kind of like that first one we looked at, I like, I like the idea of kind of things moving around, or I'm sorry, of geometric shapes. But again, how can you kind of play with it so it doesn't become like just the shapes only look like this, how can they really kind of come into a different arrangement? How can they be, much more fluid as opposed to being so static in, this configuration? So what does that look like? And, is it even just like making a whole bunch more and, having that move over from front to back, kind of overtake? It kind of looks like bubbles. I don't think that was the answer, but it's something to think about. Like, how can you just continue to play with what's going on here, and really, give it some sort of kind of oomph, give it some sort of not just a copy paste from the background, but really have kind of a different look to it. Oops, let's get back to. There's my. Oh, okay. The properties bar has moved now. I'm sorry. I'm having a moment where it's like, wait, where are all the properties of the shapes themselves? Is it right here? Oh yeah, here it is. Whoa, new software. Always fun to figure out until it's not. Okay, so anyway, but yeah, so how can you just go through and further kind of tweak what's happening here? And even, does this need to be pink? Or could it instead be white? And, then it only becomes visible when there's a shape, behind it. That might be kind of cool. So you just need to like reveal enough of the letters that you can that it becomes readable, but not so much that it's like, fully static. It's more just like a hint, kind of like light rays coming through a cloud. The text itself becomes kind of like those sunbeams. So that's, maybe something to consider, which I think is actually really kind of cool looking. And maybe instead of green, and this is, you can say it's not my idea, so no, that's totally fine. But maybe instead of green, the other color becomes yellow, which is a much more kind of sunny color. And then, that in itself is another way to kind of add to, just get rid of that, add to this feel. So, things to consider. It's going to take it orange, take out the K. So, could you just use sun colors and then have, the letters coming out of there? Interesting idea. So, just the things to consider, things to think about. So I like the circles. I like the idea of that. But again, how can you just make it slightly more dynamic, slightly less kind of copy paste from one side to the next, and instead really play with interpretation of just kind of what this could be, what these ideas could be. Kind of how these little clusters are working together. So, but yeah, and the other thing too is just make sure you get that emboss here somewhere, because that was a portion of the grade. So if you resubmit it with an emboss, hint, hint, your grade will go up quite a bit. So good things. Okay, so again, here, how can you again just play with not a copy paste directly, but more of just the suggestion of whatever it looked like. A suggestion of how you can play with elements from the other piece. So it doesn't become, the direct replication. It's instead more of a variety. And this is because it was this was a copy and paste from Illustrator. But how cool is this? Like, if you just played with these chunked out shapes. I believe this is like a happy accident, and it looks really cool. But yeah, I mean, could it be, could you have these kind of crazy shapes moving around, moving through? It kind of looks like an orange now with a, which is not a bad thing. It looks like an orange with a little leaf coming out of it. But yes, I mean, just play a little bit. Like you, and if you're like, this feels really overwhelming, like it's week 4, I don't want to reconceptualize and think. What I would say is just 15 minutes. Don't open your file. Save it as something new, like practice or test or something like that. And anybody can do this as well. And just say, okay, what are the potential, like what could I do with these shapes? How could I move them around? How could I change their color? How could I just do kind of a playful feel to this? And if it's terrible and if you hate it, you always have your old version that you can go back to. But you never know. It might be a really cool thing. Like when I was just kind of fracturing these shapes, it looks really cool to see like all the different partial circles. And so that's kind of a fun thing. And you could always take these, copy it, and bring it right back into Illustrator and work with these shapes, with these symbols as well. So you can copy back and forth because InDesign and Illustrator have a very good vector relationship. So yeah, just kind of see what could work. And like I said, 20 minutes, just save it as something different. Just play, just try. And this is for anybody that's maybe having a hard time with getting outside of the idea of replicating, because yeah, it's just see what can happen. And maybe nothing, like maybe it crashes and burns, like we don't know. But when we can get out of just that like get it done mindset and have just a little bit more of a playful mindset, you never know what cool stuff can emerge. And you guys, trust your guts. Like you've made it to the 300 level course, so you've got good ideas. So come and come and explore. Don't feel like you need to self-censor or anything. Just kind of go with it and see what happens. Turn on some good music. Get a little coffee or something, and it should be good. All right, so let's go to our final one. And here you can see Cloud Sunbeam. Oh, welcome. We are just doing, we're just doing some feedback. So make sure that you watch the first part of the session, mostly because there was feedback on your piece for a student who just came in. So you want to make sure that you can check it out and see some ideas. Okay, so here is another one, and we're going to just open up the layers panel. Here's the emboss layer. And again, can't really see it because it's Cloud Sunbeam is the thing that will be embossed. And you want to always make sure, this is for everybody, you need to have in your CD a new layer that's labeled emboss, and that has whatever you want to be embossed in it in 100% black. So you just want to kind of indicate that, and then separate it out in your layers panel. So very, very, very important. And it's super easy. So, kind of go with it. Okay, so here again looks interesting. I like how these shapes and things are coming together. One thing that feels a little odd, which I actually just tried moving it to see if it would work, is this little, oops, where did it go? Come on. Is this little white space here where the shapes aren't quite like moving forward. So what I would recommend is just like nudging it up a little bit so there's no white. It's super picky, but it just feels better when the flood of color goes to the purple, as opposed to is kind of not quite there. So I would just nudge that up slightly. I really like how these are kind of moving through this kind of linear pattern. I think feels super cool. And I like too that it's very subtle, so you don't really see it, but you kind of see it. So it's just a nice kind of texture and piece overall. So all right, so let's check to see what the folder looks like over here, and here it goes. You can see here again the interesting linear kind of stuff happening, and then just Cloud Sunbeam, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, pretty easy, and again feels very effective as a good kind of combo. One thing you might want to try too with this is just like we've said in a couple of these folders, maybe just bringing a couple little triangular pieces onto this flap. So again, this is the flap that, zoom up, this is the flap that goes up. So, front and back, you have all this like riot of color and triangles and lines and whatever. So if you just put a couple down here as well, I think that might be kind of cool and just be a way to bring in the outside into the inside of the folder. It's just like a little finishing nod to something. It's nothing. It's nothing huge, but just to be kind of a cool way to kind of keep it connected. So just an idea. All right, so I think that covers everything from these different pieces. So for a student who came in just recently, one thing I did say, this is unrelated to the assignment of the assessment, make sure that you're going into your Adobe Creative Cloud and just updating your Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, and essentially anything else you might have with to the most recent version, which I think is 2018, because it's kind of cool to see. I think it's kind of cool to see what's new. I have no idea what's new, but it's just good to get the most updated version, and then you can explore around a little bit and figure out what's new. Kind of the fun thing about being a designer, and also the inconvenient thing about being a designer, is that software does update in kind of a world of its own, and so you want to always be aware of how to do it, and you want to have a good experience, or not a good experience, but you want to have experience in just updating, exploring, kind of being comfortable in that manner, because this is something that will always happen to you. So you will you will think that you're doing good, that you know how software is working, whatever, and then Illustrator or Photoshop or InDesign will come in and decide to run amok, and then you have to kind of figure it out again. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Okay. Well, let's jump back into our slides, and just want to reiterate that any feedback that you were given, that you saw, etc., if you want to put it into your piece and do a resubmit, that's totally fine. I would be 100% open to that. And if you haven't turned in work yet, hopefully this gives you a feeling of like, okay, not too crazy, not too hard. I think we can do it, and so you can act in that manner as well. So, all right. So let's move into something different. And actually, the reason we're going to do this is because of this discussion. Okay, so in discussion this week, it's going to be a little bit different than previous discussions, namely because in previous discussions you were kind of like looking back, or not looking back, but looking out, like kind of imagining a client, imagining how you would direct them. that sort of thing. So for this discussion, it's actually a look inward, and it's you kind of posting and considering and thinking about what you've created over the course of the last couple weeks, and how you feel about what you made, kind of where you struggled, where you feel like you succeeded, that sort of thing. So we're going to just talk a little bit about the importance of critique and feedback and being self-reflective, and hopefully just give you guys a couple kind of empowering tips so that you can engage in this. So you can see here, graphic design is an inherently iterative process. So whether you are engaged in schoolwork, client work, or work on a personal project, the design process is a series of creating, reflecting, adjusting, and creating once more. Successful designers must know how to receive and implement feedback throughout the process so that the final outcome best connects with its intended audience. In addition, design projects often morph and shift over the course of time, and as a designer, you are called upon to extend ideas into new mediums or modes. So, personal story that I'm in the midst of right now. I'm designing a presentation for a friend who's actually finishing up her dissertation, and we are in now version 11, I think, of her presentation, and it's a good thing she's a friend because it's had a lot of changes and shifts. But yes, I mean, oftentimes you think you're finished, but then, you get feedback from your clients, or you look at it yourself with a critical eye, and then things, tend to shift a little bit. So in this discussion, we're going to engage in peer-to-peer project feedback so that everyone can benefit from the collective wisdom of the class. And this is like no joke, gang, because you guys have great eyes. You've been around, you've made it to a 300 level course. You are designers now, fully fledged, and you also have good opinions and good ideas. And so part of being a designer is being able to look at other people's work and give them feedback, as well as sharing your own work and receiving feedback from others. So this is going to be a good way to kind of practice that. So read the chapter from the open textbook in course media, provide you with a valuable refresher on design principles and design elements, and enable you to give your peers substantive grounded feedback on how they can make their work even better. And if you're thinking substantive grounded what? Basically that just means, feedback that's not just, I like it, it's cool, keep it all. It's like, I like it because I feel like you have good contrast in your colors. Your text is easy to read. I don't like it because it feels like you are making it difficult to read because your background is confusing. Just things that are grounded in something, rather just kind of our first kind of instinctual emotions. Okay, so please share images from your week 2 assessment and week 3 assignment, along with 200 words describing your design inspiration and reflecting on your process by answering the following questions. What goals and strategies did you learn while creating this project? So for example, I learned how to put a die cut into a piece, or I learned how to make an emboss, or I learned that it's ridiculously easy to do these applications, and I'm super psyched to try it, whatever you happen to feel. What do you feel is currently working well with your project? What did you especially enjoy making? Who or what did you look to for inspiration as you were creating these elements? So basically, why did you make what you made? And if you're like, I don't know, dig a little bit deeper, because again, we all have things that inspire us, and it's very, very valuable, especially when you're, getting ready to be a professional designer, that you can explain your choices and you can explain your methods, and it's deeper than, I just did it because I like it. You have to be able to say, this reminds me of this. This, I chose to use this color scheme because the client wanted, X, or this font reminds me of something, therefore I decided to use it. So you have to kind of be able to dig in a bit deeper and see what you might have, or what you might be able to find and show. Okay, and then also, where are you struggling? What ideas or elements did you find especially challenging? How can we as a class help you finalize these elements this week? So what's a win and what's a toughie? So you can see here, this student has posted, and then you can see the different parts. So kind of cool. So yeah, so jump in and put your stuff up there. If you're wondering how you actually, this is kind of a practical question, if you're wondering how you actually get images to display, I would suggest you just take a screenshot of whatever you want to show. So if it's, so if it's this thing, Shift Command 4, here's the little snappy thing, and then go into Canvas, and then what you're going to need to do is go to your profile and then go to Files. Go to your profiles, and then, like me, look at it and say, whoa, I need to update my profile picture. So File, and then go to Upload, and then find your screenshot that you took. Here it is. Then just click Choose, and it's going to upload. And then, so here's what I just uploaded. And then come back into the course. It's a little bit clunky, admittedly, but hopefully you guys have used this feature. And if you're really struggling, if it's really not working, just put it as an attachment. That's fine. We can all download those as well. But yes, then click Reply, and then click Embed Image, and then click Canvas, and then click My Files. So about 10 million steps to get here, but we are good. We know how to do this. And then find your screenshot. So Embed Image, Canvas, find your screenshot, click Update, and then just start typing. Here is where you reflect. Wow, glad they knew what that word was. Reflect and such. So that's kind of how you get it in. And then just click Post, and then it should show up if everything is good. So I'm going to delete that because that's not my piece, so I can't post that. But yeah, so again, post your stuff, and please respond to other people and just say, hey, I think it's working, or hey, I think it's not. Mostly because, as we're going to see in a very short time when we get back into the slides, you guys hear my voice a ton, and in many ways you hear my voice way too much, because the only kind of, I feel like, and perhaps this isn't the case, I'm hoping it's not the case, but I feel like the only people that are really giving you guys feedback, in this course, has been me. And over the course of your time here at IU has been your instructors. And so while we're great at giving feedback and, we talk endlessly, there's something very good about you guys giving each other feedback, and you guys, seeing things from the point of view of your peers, because it's so much better to get more ideas, more input than less. So really, use this time as a place where you can, get that, where you can really contribute, and where you can also, just listen, because when you are out in the design world, you will be getting feedback constantly, and you will be asked to give feedback constantly. And so you want to figure out how to navigate through that, just because it is, it can be a tricky process sometimes. All right, so in that sphere, let's talk a little bit about critique, as far as what is critique. So I would challenge you guys, whether you are here in person watching as this is recorded, or whether you're watching the video. When I say critique, what is kind of the first thing that pops into your heads? What is the first kind of feeling or emotion that you have? Yeah, what happens when you hear the word critique? Does anything? Just a couple seconds. You guys can think about that, kind of touch into that. Okay, so I will confess that whenever I hear the word critique, I always get this kind of like feeling in my stomach of like, and like there's a little hint of fear, mostly because um, whatever uh, whatever had happened to me as a student, or I don't even think it's anything that was school related. Just for me, whenever I feel like getting feedback, I always feel like it's inherently just a little bit scary. But it doesn't have to be. But so if you're kind of in that place where you're like, it's a little bit scary, I totally get you. Or if you're one of those people who's like, I love critique, I love feedback because it makes me stronger. That's what I always aspire to. But yeah, so anywhere, kind of you are in the spectrum is totally okay. But I think it's just very beneficial to um, be aware of how you feel about it, because kind of the reality of being a designer is that it's always going to happen. And so, if you can kind of proactively identify your feelings, you can be a little bit better at proactively managing them. So whether they're, well, especially if they're negative, you want to, figure out good kind of coping mechanisms, good and healthy coping mechanisms, because it's something that, you really do have to, figure out. Let's see, you're nervous because you never know what the other person would say about the project that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also it's a little tricky because I always feel like projects are so personal, like even client projects that aren't personal, they get personal. And so it's always that feeling of like, will they like it and will they like me? And like, no, your work is not you. It's so different, but it always feels kind of like that. So I always get that. Okay, so critique is, how would you answer this question? Is it telling people their work is cool? Telling people their work is bad? Telling people they are cool? Telling people they are bad? Or none of the above? And again, just take a couple seconds. Like, how would you respond to this question? Which of these letters would you choose, if any? Letter or letters, I should say. And also, you know, what would your head say versus what would your heart say? Maybe it's not the same thing, but just again, kind of get in touch with those feelings, those emotions, kind of what's going on. So how would you respond to this? Take a couple more seconds. You guys can think. Okay, so um, here's the kind of something I hinted at before. Critique is more than either A or B, so it's more than telling people their work is cool or their work is bad. Though, in all honesty, cool or bad often do enter into kind of how you speak about the work or how the work is spoken of in a critique process. But critique should never be telling people that they personally are good, they personally are bad, they're working, they're not, that sort of thing. So critique should never be about the designer. It should always only be about the work. And so it's very important as you are giving critique that you watch your language and that you make sure that you keep the work kind of front and center, and you never personalize it in a way that would be unhealthy, unhelpful to the designer. And it's very important too, as the designer, that you always apply your filter of this is about my work. This is not about me. Because if it's about you, you are not going to be able to listen and get the helpful stuff that you need about the work. You are going to get defensive, and you are going to want to fight or get out of the situation or whatever, and it's not going to be helpful. So it's very, very, very important that you develop that kind of thicker skin. And it's also incredibly difficult, like just 100% saying it's not easy, but it's very necessary. Let's see, none of the above. Yep, exactly, none of the above. Okay, so we're gonna talk about how to go from yikes to yay when it comes to critique, so that you can see, what a helpful thing it is. And I don't want to present this as a downer. Like, I feel like I've taken you all into my own insecurities as a designer. So you don't have to be afraid of critique. It's a really good thing, I promise. You don't have to be as neurotic as I can be at times. But yeah, so we're going to talk yikes to yay, or if you're overly yay about critique, maybe you need to realize the seriousness of it. So maybe we'll get a little yikes in there. We shall see. Okay, so basically, what is critique? Critique is a check-in feedback process, often engaged in multiple times over the course of a graphic design project. So going back to the professional project that I'm currently working on, which is the PowerPoint presentation that I'm designing, multiple check-ins over the course of a design project. So kind of how my own design process is working on that is that I initially got the project brief. I created something per the brief, sent it to the client. They said, I must not have been very clear about what I wanted, because I didn't want any of this. And so then we had to go back to the drawing board, make sure we were on the same page with the project brief. It was a very good, again, reiteration that oftentimes you think you are on the same page with a client, especially if it's a client who you happen to know personally. But it's very, very important that you even clarify things that you kind of would take for granted, because guarantee your definition and someone else's definition of anything is probably a bit different. So it's very important to, talk and ask questions. And even if you feel like, well, that's a stupid question, just ask it anyway, because oftentimes, it's better to have more clarity than to guess, because we don't guess very well. And that's just a general, nobody guesses well. Okay, so critique is a check-in feedback process, multiple times over the course of a graphic design project. And so with my clients, we check in and see what I've created, see why I've created it, kind of per the things I was getting from the project brief, and then see how it is or is not working, and then kind of go back and tweak and adjust, and basically go from there. So multiple keywords though, multiple check-ins to see basically how it's coming along, how it's going, that sort of thing. Okay, so your own ideas live in your head. The client does not. And critique is really a way to kind of bridge that process. So to kind of connect your thinking about the project, your client's thinking about the project, kind of to find a place and a space of commonality in that, kind of in what's going on. So critique is really that connection point, that bridge. And because we need clients, because otherwise we don't get paid, it's something that we really need to take advantage of. Okay, and also important thing to note, critique really is collaboration. So it's your chance for you and your client, especially, to sit down together and to just open up dialogue about what is going on and about what they need and about how you can kind of shift and adjust accordingly. And so the level to which you can engage with your clients, meaning like honestly show up, listen openly, ask good questions, listen some more, is the level I think to which you will be successful as a designer. So if you just can come up with a whole bunch of really cool creative ideas, that's great. But unless you can kind of listen and harness those ideas to what your client needs, I don't think you're going to be as successful. So critique is really collaboration. So you need to show up for it, and you need to make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page together. So here's a good quote from Casey McDaniel. When we embrace a truly collaborative process, critique affords the incredible intersection of vision, design, strategy, technology, and people. So basically what this quote is saying is that critique is kind of the really cool thing where we get to see how what we're making kind of has a larger impact, has a larger reach, has a larger scope, because it is where all these different pieces kind of come together and overlap. And it's just cool to see, essentially what comes out of it, what comes alive when we put ourselves, kind of into these places and spaces. So truly collaborative critique process. It affords the incredible intersection of vision, design, strategy, technology, and people. And this doesn't just, start when you do client work and you're in that kind of critique situation. Same thing, when you guys can offer critique to one another. So like in discussion this week, even if you just shoot someone a message saying, hey, I saw your project wherever, and I just thought, I really like this about it, but I really thought this could, be a little bit better. Same thing, same idea with critique. So what, how can you enter into that conversation? And how can you also receive the gift that other people are, metaphorically giving you when they are interested in their work and kind of thinking critically about it. All right, so critiquing an unfinished design mitigates the risk of completely missing the project's ultimate goals. Acting as a wedge in the creative process, good feedback can readjust the design message and help us figure out what we're really trying to say. So I think this is kind of unfinished design. I know that our student who's here reflected that it's really kind of nerve-wracking because you never know what they're going to say. And so true. And it's especially nerve-wracking when it's unfinished, because it's like, well, this is still in process. So like, don't judge it too harshly. But so if you can, so that's a thing for sure. Nothing, we're not going to ignore that. But also the good thing about critique, especially in process, is that you don't get too far down the road and then realize that you've totally missed it. So like, for example, with my client project, if I had, just kept on going down the road of what I thought she really wanted, which was not what she wanted at all, I would have finished it. I would have fallen in love with it. I would have said, this is perfect. Pay me money now. And then, she would have seen it and said, nope, like this isn't working. But because, we entered into this process where we were doing critique, we were doing feedback all along the way, there weren't any surprises. There were small surprises, but small surprises are so much better than big surprises, because you can shift small surprises very easily, whereas bigger surprises are like, ooh, this is a little too much going on. So, all right, so here's just a little graphic of the design process. So ideally, we have the blank page, we have the objective, we get there in a straight line. Realistically, we have a blank page, so we have kind of free reign, and the objective is out there, and we just kind of go into left field. So feedback is the wedge that comes along kind of hits into us, bumps into us, and then redirects us to our objective. And I really feel like this is such an elegant illustration of what goes on. And I feel like it really is, it really is. It rings true to my experience in so many different ways. And I would guess maybe it rings a bit true to yours as well, and just what you've experienced kind of in the design process overall. All right, so let's move on. Oftentimes, the thing that turns a hunch into a real breakthrough is another hunch that's lurking in somebody else's mind. And I apologize if you're like, this is just a session of quotes. It kind of is, but there's so many good ones about the power and the process of critique. And so, I want to, kind of jump into those in a lot of ways. But so the thing that turns a hunch into a real breakthrough is another hunch that's lurking in somebody else's mind. And so again, this is the important part of why you should be giving feedback to one another, is because you never know, what hunches are lurking in the minds of your classmates. That might be just the perfect thing to kind of get you started and get you moving down that correct pathway that you would have never known about otherwise. Okay, so design is research. Very, very, very important to note. You want to research, who your client is, who your audience is, what most effectively connects to keywords, that sort of thing. And critique is definitely a process. So critique is all about kind of connecting, getting feedback, interpreting, and then moving forward from there to kind of see what you can do to make your piece even better. Okay. For a good designer, a good critique, or for a designer, not a good designer, a good critique can do the following. So prevent a meandering design from veering too far from timeline, budget, scope, or other project constraints. So again, you can think about that. Critique is like the wedge kind of pushing you back in. It can allow others to help, teach, and guide when there are weaknesses or confusion. So it can be very instructive, like, I think this is working, but have you thought about, using this tool in Illustrator? Because I think you can make some cool complex shapes that way. That's a chance where you could then teach or guide. Again, a good critique can accustom others to the shoddy state of unfinished design to talk about bigger ideas and strategy. So again, if you do critique with a client, kind of in process, it's cool because they get to see what a design looks like when it isn't quite finished. So what that kind of interim state is like, you can expose them to that and then kind of explain the design process to them. Again, take on a bit of a teaching role. Familiarize colleagues, managers, and clients with the design process. Hello, yeah, that's that again. And then invest everyone in the project early on. So really kind of build up your stakeholders in the project. If people are giving critique, if people are giving feedback, it means that they are sharing their ideas. It means that they are kind of personally investing in what's going on. And it is a good good thing to have, because people that are vested in something, if they can take ownership, then they tend to just enjoy it a whole lot more. So good critique can circumvent alarming change requests by responding immediately as a team, distribute responsibility for developing creative output, build team trust, and eliminate destructive ego. So you guys are mostly working on projects yourself. So some of these things are not applicable, but when you are working as a designer in the quote-unquote real world, the world beyond, you will often have files that you create that you then have to pass on to somebody else. There would be much more of like a group project team-ish element to what you're doing. So your job will directly impact somebody else's, and you will be directly impacted by the way somebody else goes about their job. So if you are very open with your process, and if you are open with critique, if you are open with kind of welcoming others in and being, just I guess being open and transparent. Excuse me, it does tend to help things go much better because, everybody stays on the same page, and you just have kind of that connection. And again, it's probably something that you're not feeling right now because it's just like you and the assignment and essentially your instructor. But in the future, it is something to be aware of, and managing those interpersonal dynamics are a very interesting thing to learn and to learn how to manage. Okay, so how do you do critique? How do you give critique? What's kind of the keys? What should you think about? We kind of establish what it is, why it's a good idea. So critique tends to be conversational. It tends to be output focused. It tends to be open-ended, and it tends to have really a present and response format to it. So according to these guidelines, do we have critiques in our class? When I open up files, when I talk about what's going on, that sort of thing. And here are the how 4 steps. Again, conversational, output focused, open-ended, if I can talk, present and response driven. So question, do we have critiques in our class? And give you guys a couple seconds to think about, what exactly do we do in class? Would it be critique? Okay, so if you're thinking like, of course, Lisa, you give us feedback, you talk about what to do, you tell us what to do, you move things around in our documents, whatever. Sounds like critique to me. I would actually say not so much. I would say we have elements of critique, we have elements of feedback, but the thing that I think is really lacking, and I think it's kind of something I wish we could figure out better, but I just don't know if we can. And that's not because I'm being a downer. I just don't know if practically it would work. But yeah, I think that when I give you feedback, I never have space for you to respond. And there's never space for you guys to present your work. And so when I give you feedback, it's from like this extremely one-sided place. And so, I mean, it's good because I have experience and, I give you feedback based on my experience. It's not just on like emotional whims. But in true critique, how it works is that you guys all would present your work and you would tell me why you did what you did. And then from that place of knowing why, then we would all give you critique. So kind of what's going to happen in discussion this week is going to be much more of a true critique as opposed to what's happened in our course, pretty much every week since week 1, where I kind of just talk. So I would encourage you guys to just kind of think of it through that kind of lens. So in true critique, you present and you explain kind of what you did and why, and then other people's voices come in and they kind of help guide you toward what your kind of ultimate goal is, how to be more successful. So when I see your work, I have no idea why you did what you did. I have like guesses, and my guesses may or may not be on track. So it's an interesting thing, and like I don't know if you guys you can think about this, like how would you feel if every assignment you had to submit, you did like a little just written blurb as to why you made the choices you did, just to kind of explain the process. Like, would that be too much? Are you like, that would be a drag? Or would that be like, yes, that would be great? Because, I always feel like there's got to be students where I give them feedback and I'm like, yeah, I don't like this and I don't like this and this isn't working and switch it all. And they're like, well, no, because I did it because of, X, Y, Z. it's working because of this. And had I known that, then I would just say, oh yeah, you're totally right. Like, it's working because of this, maybe tweak this one thing, and then I think it could be great. But yeah, so it's a constant tension. And it's an interesting thing to think about, because yeah, you will have to talk about your work or write about your work when you are a professional. And so I always wonder, how can we help you guys be more comfortable doing that? And then also, how can we just open up the critique process more, so that it isn't just my voice kind of going in. So it is, kind of that collaborative experience. So anyway, good stuff to think about if you're here, or if you're watching and you're like, I think that actually is a good idea. Have you ever thought of doing this? I would be very curious what that this is, because this is something that legitimately I always struggle with, that, you guys, yeah, you don't get a chance to speak. And somehow, how can we have you speak in a way that's, fully online and not context dependent? So all right. So changes here in this week. Yeah, this week you do get to speak, which is going to be in discussion 4. So in discussion 4, I would encourage you to just follow these 3 steps as far as what you're doing and what you're putting up there. The first is to present your work. So, this is what I did. This is why I did it. This is, how I think cloud sunbeams keywords are being channeled into my piece, etc. So present and kind of explain your choices. And then second step, ask. So if you are struggling with something, if you're, not sure if the color scheme is working, if you're not sure kind of how the font is coming along, any of that stuff, ask for help, or ask for just kind of what people think, how they're taking it in, that sort of thing. And then number 3, be very good about listening. And it's easy to listen when it's typed comments because you don't have to worry about, actually being quiet. You can kind of have it be a noisy atmosphere to listen in. But yeah, so listen to what, people have said, and, respond if you feel like it's a good comment, say thanks for that. I think that that's really cool. Or on the other hand, say, I don't think this is working at all, or I don't agree with your feedback or whatever, and then kind of expound on it that way. So kind of check that out. See, the number 2 looks more like a shape. I know, aren't these numbers amazing? This font, this is a fancy font that I think I started using at the beginning of the year, and I was like, okay, I'll get tired of this after like 2 mods. I'm still kind of not tired of it. I feel like all of my students might be tired of it because you guys have probably seen it too much, but I still think it's really cool. Okay, so present, ask, listen, keep that in mind. So take notes. Sharing your work at any stage can make you feel vulnerable, but discussing it lends credence to the design process. So present a rationale for all of your design decisions. So why did you do what you did? And, we believe in you. We we think you are probably going to make good choices. But then, just give us some insight, give us some reasons why, and, let us know, let us know what you're thinking. Justify and explain all of your choices. So again, color schemes, font choices, imagery. I'm trying to think what else you might have. Shapes, lines, etc. Really, explain it and give us the backstory. And then also ask for what you need. So if you're struggling with anything, be open about it, be honest about it, and figure out, how we can potentially help you, or how we can, potentially make it even better. So for those of you who, this is a good one, for those of you who are just replicating, from panel to panel, if you are struggling with a way that you can keep consistency in your design piece without direct replication, ask for that and see what the rest of the class thinks. I showed you and told you what I thought. my ideas may not be the best ones, so most likely somebody else has a better idea. So yeah, I mean, ask and see what other people might think of the process. So, okay, and let us try it, which is going to be in discussion 4. So, let's see, I'm going to say, should we do this? We're getting a little bit late. No, I guess we'll just keep on going through. Okay, so you must understand what is going on in the feedback others are giving you. So this is listen. This often means decoding what they are saying for greater clarity and for greater learning. And this is going to be just a couple things to kind of do or avoid as you are giving and receiving feedback. So the first, be careful that when you are giving feedback that you don't suffer from a lack of clarity. So example, I don't like it or I really love it. That's great if you say these things, but that can't be all you say. You have to kind of say a bit more. So kind of, I don't like it because of what? I really love it because of what? So kind of make sure you have that kind of that grounding statement there. Taking it personal. So you want to make sure that you avoid, just your own personal decisions. So like, I don't like purple, therefore I don't like your design. Unfortunately, if there's a very good reason why you use purple in the design, it doesn't matter, who likes purple or who doesn't, because it's more of a thing. It's not a personal preference. So again, you want to be very clear and make sure that you make sure that you're open about kind of what's going on, and you depersonalize it in a good way. Design apathy. It looks fine as it is. Let's just go with it. So this is, if you want to just if you want to get points for discussion, but you don't really have anything to say, looks great, go with it. Again, you really want to add just a bit more bulk, kind of extend the conversation. So another thing you might kind of run into with feedback is contradictions. So for example, this needs to appeal to baby boomers, but the users will probably be in their early 20s. And this is more kind of client-focused feedback that you have to figure out how to demystify. And the issue here is baby boomers and clients or users in their early 20s will not be baby boomers. So if you have just some like weird stuff going on in feedback that you get, it's better to ask another clarifying question than it is just to take this at face value. So for example, you want to say, if somebody gives you this feedback, I'm a little bit confused, can you help me understand what you really mean and why? Excuse me, so we can get to the bottom of this. So, figure out how to kind of keep the conversation going. Don't just say yes and then say wah on the inside. Make your wah felt in a good way. Indecisiveness. I'm not sure what I think. What do you think? This is a classic client answer. What do you think is the best option? Again, this is your chance as a designer to really ask additional questions, to really kind of lean into the collaborative relationship and figure out really how you can find the answers that you need to find, how you can really kind of jump in a good way. Okay, so resistance. That's a great idea, but not right now. This is another answer that you get oftentimes when you're in like group projects, you're working with a group of people, that sort of thing. So, kind of navigating through multiple egos and ideas and designers especially. So, if this feedback or concept comes back, again, this is your chance not to get defensive, but this is your chance to say, all right, so let's talk about this further. Let's unpack this in a respectful manner, and let's figure out, what's going on and why. All right, too much negativity. I don't like the type or that picture. The colors are off. I think you've missed the point. This is a toughie. When everything's wrong, it's hard not to say everything's wrong, just fire me now. Um, but again, when you have a very negative feedback session, you do want to, kind of push past it, push through it, and just say, okay, we know these things aren't working. So what is this going to tell us moving forward? How can we kind of switch things around, and how can we, start working? So in a lot of ways, getting negative feedback is tough, but getting negative feedback is also kind of good because it clarifies what you shouldn't be doing, and kind of how you can move forward from there. So, but it never seems that way, but consider that. Okay, so think and consider always. So really think and consider on your feedback that you receive. When you are engaged in critique, think and consider, is it something you want to do? Is it something you feel like would make your piece stronger? In the context of school, like, you never have to take anything certainly anything that I give you as feedback. You never have to listen to it if you're like, this works better for me because of whatever, and that's fine. When you're in a client situation and someone is paying you, you have slightly less leeway, but again, it's ultimately your design. So, you can fight for what you want to fight for. And that's 100% okay. Okay, so giving feedback, couple tips for that. And this is kind of in the context now for this discussion of what you all can do when you're writing your responses to your peers. So what do you see? These are kind of things to think about. What do you see? What makes sense to you? What feels a bit off? And then ultimately, how can it be better? So, from a visual point, what do you see is kind of, you describe what you see happening in the piece overall. So when you look at, let's pull this up so we can see it in a real way. So let's say when we look at this, first thing, what do you see? You could say, wow, your piece looks, a lot like different shapes, and the beams almost feel like sunbeams to me. So what do you see? So I see things that are colorful. I see lines that are kind of looking like sunbeams. And what this process does with you describing what you see is it just gives the designer some insight into how the piece looks from an outside perspective. So as you guys are realizing, probably, when you design something, you tend to get very close to it, and you tend to not really be able to see it all that much anymore because you've designed it and all that. So just this first step of having other people reflect on what they see in it is a good chance to let you kind of see it through their eyes and see, kind of, is it what you think it looks like? Is it doing kind of what you think what you were hoping it did, or it should be doing? Or does it not look, quite like that? So it's a good check-in, and just to kind of see what's going on. Okay, so what do you see? Oops. What do you see is that I lost my slides, but okay, what do you see? What makes sense to you? What feels off? And then how can it be better? So looking into kind of what you see, and then digging into how it's working and how it may or may not, be working or could be working better, or that sort of thing. Okay, so that is everything as far as critique, how to do critique, what to do for critique, all that sort of thing. So hopefully that gave you guys a good insight into discussion for this week, and then even more good insight into just the whole critique process and what that entails, what that is like, etc. So it's an interesting thing to figure out and to participate in. I think that critique, yeah, you get used to it. You get used to it eventually. but it is something that is very unique to us as designers, and it is something to, yeah, something to think about, something to engage in for sure. Okay, so we are going to shift gears completely, and we are going to finish out this session just by doing a little bit of talk about postcards. And if you're like, wait, what? Critique to postcards? What? How is that working? The reason that we are going to do this is because, click on the assignment, is because for your assignments for this week, you are going to, I'm not going to read everything yet, we'll do that tomorrow. You are going to create a postcard to add to your campaign, and the postcard is going to have both an emboss and a specialty ink application. So yeah, so you are going to add a postcard to the elements that you previously created, which those elements would be your poster from week 2. So assessment 2 is the poster, so poster. Your folder from week 3, your CD cover from week 3, and now your postcard for week 4. So everybody should have, in theory, 4 pieces that will be part of their Cloud Sunbeam campaign, and those 4 pieces will be great things to put into your portfolio. So we're going to talk about postcard design specifically, kind of in theory, and then in tomorrow's session we're going to go through and do a demo of actually how to design a postcard, and then we're going to talk about mock-ups, and we're also going to talk about Behance portfolio upload, because that will be the second part of this this assignment, is putting your pieces up on Behance and adding them to your hopefully growing, amazing portfolio that is part of your digital presence as a designer. So kind of where we are headed. Okay, so to get us thinking in the realm of postcards, and because fully acknowledging that I've just been talking for an hour and 40 minutes, which means that you may or may not be ready to listen anymore. We're going to play a little game called Postcards Yes or No, and we're going to just look at these postcards and say, are these effective? And we've also just done the whole critique thing, so we should all be thinking in a good critiquey manner. But yeah, are these effective? Are they working? Are they not? How could they be made better? All of that sort of thing. So if you're watching via video, I would encourage you play along as well, mostly because a lot of times it's much easier to see mistakes in work that other people have done. And then if you can see those mistakes in work that other people have done, you are much less likely to make mistakes of your own, because you will already kind of be aware of them. So postcard yes or no is a very good game to play. Okay, so here's the first one. And is this a good postcard? If this arrived at your door, would you say, beautiful? Or would you say, huh, not quite sure what it is, what's going on? So give a couple seconds, think about it. Is this a postcard yes, or is this a postcard no? Okay, it looks like the input from the chat box is it's a postcard no. It doesn't really look like a postcard. And I would push a little bit more. Do you feel like it's easy to understand and read, or do you feel like it tends to be a little bit confusing? And again, if you're watching via video, we've established it's a no. Is it easy to read or is it confusing? Okay, it looks a little confusing. Yep. Yeah, it kind of is telling you everything and then some. And also this is probably also because it's on screen, but that red kind of coming out against the green, it's really hard to see. Yeah, so lots of confusion going on, lots of information. And it's interesting because I think I'm finally getting, I would read finally healthcare you can afford. And I was like, wait, what? Healthcare? This is carpet cleaning. And then it's like, oh, wait, because if you have clean carpets, maybe your health will be better. Um, maybe that's a correlation. Not sure. But yeah, so interesting stuff. So this is confusing. So don't let this look and feel happen to you. Don't have a whole bunch of crazy information. Don't have clashy colors. And also, where's the alignment in this whole shebang? Nothing is connected to anything else. It's all just pieces of information kind of thrown out. It feels incredibly confusing and chaotic. Okay, next one. Is this a postcard? Yes or no? Well, does this feel like a postcard, I should say? Is this a postcard? No, obviously it's a picture, but could this feel like a postcard? So a couple seconds, think about it. Okay, what's interesting is that this one has kind of in actually the same, similar background as this one in that it's got the green, but because this one is much more restrained in its color palette, in that it has just white text on top of green, it's a whole lot easier to read. Let's see, the chat box looks like saying it could be depending on what they're talking about. Yep, yeah. So this is a good example of a potential postcard, and the reason that it is a good example is because it has restraint in it. So it has good contrast, the background, as well as the text. They're different enough. They're not like back here where the red and the green are super clashy. There's enough contrast between them so they're easy to read. And the other thing that's effective too is that there is alignment. So all of the type is lined up. It has a center alignment. It's in kind of a centralized pillar, and it's easy to read as well. So makes sense easily. Okay, so here's another one. Is this kind of a direct-ish mail postcard? Do you think? Would this be a yes? Would this be a no? What are you guys thinking? Okay, it looks like I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm going to say this is a yes. Again, it has a very logical flow to it. So it's got some good contrast in the colors of the text. So the orange against the kind of black and white image background, the orange flag, the orange text. It feels very kind of symmetrical. And the thing I think is actually really cool about this, which I think is working well, is you have the shape of her body is essentially kind of pointing into the 50% off now. And then this text up here is kind of, you can kind of see it coming off of her foot, just the visual line of it. So it's a very tight composition overall in kind of how it's constructed. So your eye really knows where to go through the piece. And because it's got that, again, kind of very restrained use of color, your eye kind of bounces into the appropriate spots. So I think this is a good example of how to have more content than this one, but not so much like this where everything feels all over the place. So this feels a little bit more kind of composed overall, and it feels just a little bit more connected. Okay, so what about this one? Is this an effective postcard? Maybe, maybe not. What do you think? Okay, looks like the consensus is not so much. Some of it looks blurry. Mhm. Yeah, and it's a little bit pixelated, and it actually was a little bit pixelated. I did make it a little bit larger, but even before then, it was kind of pixelated. But yeah, this is actually something that I've seen a ton of. Like this is this is a poster promoting a gallery and some artists. And I don't know why it is, but fine artists and galleries just tend to have the like some of the worst graphic design, but like the best artwork. So I don't know why artists can't compose things in a little bit more of a logical manner, but for whatever reason, they tend to it tends to get a little bit iffy at times. But yeah, so it's kind of blurry, and also it just has lots of small bits and pieces of information. The type has a drop shadow, which is never good for type because it always makes it look hard to read, especially on a script type. But yeah, so it's lots of little bits and pieces of information, tiny pictures of paintings. So much better if it was just a painting and then some text, some information. And then, of course, the blur factor. So you really want to make sure that you are very crisp and clean in what you're producing when you're doing imagery, especially on a postcard. Okay, so I think this is so this is the end of our the end of our is this a postcard or not? And yeah, here's our final one. What would you guys say? Uh, is it a postcard yes or a postcard no? Okay, this is actually probably the most yes of what we've seen so far, because you actually see the front and the back of it, which totally does make it a postcard. But yeah, this is a definite postcard yes. Again, cool background, type that's maybe a touch hard to read because of the clouds and the lack of contrast, but is so pretty that you don't really care. You kind of make the effort because you're looking at it anyway. But yes, this is another good example of a postcard. So kind of some things that we can distill down from all of the yeses versus the nos are that effective postcard design is really design that is simple. So let me say this again. Effective postcard design is design that is very simple. So you have good attention to things like contrast, you have good attention to things like placement, you have restraint in what exactly you're telling people. If you have the feeling that you need to tell them everything and then some, a postcard is not the place to do it in, mostly because postcards are very small, and most postcards come into someone's mailbox, and we are a little bit programmed to see things of a postcard size as being junk mail. And so if it feels, overly confusing, if it feels like it's got a lot going on, if it feels like it's essentially shouting at you, um, it's not a good feeling. So you want to design in a way that kind of is different than all of that, and that feels like it's more a little piece of art that's coming through your mail slot or coming into your PO box or whatever, than that it's advertising. So if people see advertising, their instinctual response is like, nah, throw it away. I don't want it. I don't want to be advertised to. I don't want to be your target market. Whereas if people see something that's really pretty, even if it is advertising, they're like, oh, this is so pretty. I want to keep it. And as soon as you enter into the sphere of I want to keep it, then you've done a good job, because then you have effectively kind of infiltrated your target audience, and you've created something that really connects with them on a personal level. So quickest way to do that, easiest way to do that, is just to keep your design very, very simple, so that it really has kind of that not overwhelming factor to it. It really has a clear, direct message. So that's the end. The end of that. So in preparation for making your postcards for your assignment 4. And as I said, we're going to do a demo of this in tomorrow's session. But what I would recommend that you do is that everybody just take a little time, and I'm going to just stop sharing for 1 second, just a little time and just do like, and when I say little time, I mean literally, it doesn't have to be very long, 10 minutes or so, and just do a quick search on oops, that's the wrong thing. I was about to share my screen and it didn't work. Here it is. I'm in Pinterest, everybody's favorite, and do a quick search on, sorry, medium length haircuts. Whoa, postcard design, and see what comes up, and just kind of see what postcards look like. And I'm on Pinterest, and I'm just curious to see, oh, these are so cute. I can do this, draw a circle and fill it with paint. Yeah, easy. But just kind of see like what's out there as far as postcard design. This is the example, one of those that I have. But yeah, really cool stuff to see. And you guys for your, how cool is that? You guys for your postcard that you're going to make for assignment 4, it's going to be based very much on your poster. So you don't have to make, ideally, you don't have to make a ton of decisions as to what you're going to do to like lay them out and stuff. But a good thing to know is that if you're thinking about like how you can get into freelance projects, how you can make stuff that has kind of a monetary value, postcard design is really hot for wedding, like save the date. I've even seen wedding invitations come in a postcard format. So I would encourage you guys to just like look around in this world of postcards and see if there's see if there's a space for you in this, and just kind of see, you know, what you might be able to do. Like even these cool postcards that are just, you know, like little colors and things, you could make these and then, you know, put them up online and see if you could sell them. And the postcards are pretty, you know, reasonable to physically produce as well, especially using one of our short run printers. So, you know, just think about these little things. So think about postcard design in the context of, you know, first what you can design for assignment 4, but even more broadly, like, could you make a couple sets of posters for real and try to sell them? Why couldn't you? You know, you guys have the skills, you have the ideas, you have the thoughts. And so just kind of seeing what's out here in a Pinteresty manner helps to kind of just see what happens. Look at this. This is a compliment postcard book for $10. And all this is just type on the back of, or on a color. And then, you know, they figured out how to print it, which you guys know printing techniques now, so you could do that. Yeah, so kind of cool. All right, well, we won't get too far down here because, as we all know, once you look at Pinterest, here's a book of postcards. You guys could design a book of postcards and then have that be a thing that you could sell as well. And how cool would that be? Like, yeah, if you're into illustrations, anything custom like that, you could come up with your own stuff and put it in a book, like a booklet form, and then people could purchase it. That would be so cool. I could do that. Why am I not? No. But yeah, so anyway, lots to learn, lots to think about, lots to potentially, you know, integrate into your practice, just as you try things out. So cool. Okay, well, I'll stop browsing since we're just about done with our session. But yeah, all right, well, this is gonna draw this time to a close. Thanks, guys, for another great session. And I will look forward to connecting with you all again in tomorrow's session. We are also going to be a little bit early morning on that one too, at 8 a.m. Mountain on Wednesday. I know most of you are watching the recording, so I don't think you should notice any difference. But take care, guys. Have a great rest of the day, whatever day it might be. And just a reminder, tomorrow is the final session, and our course does officially close midnight on Saturday. So you want to make sure that you're getting your pieces in by then. If you have any questions about any of the feedback I gave at the beginning of this session, or if you want to, turn in any revisions to your work or whatever, feel free to, and I will try to turn those around pretty quick for you all. But yeah, otherwise, take care, and I will see you in our final session tomorrow. All right, bye, guys.